Ahoy everyone, Commodore Lyrinx here with a new journal from Capstan Games, Journal 33. Let's take a look what's inside. The development team at Capstan Games is currently operating at its highest intensity to date as the timeline narrows towards the initial release of Sea Trials. Because the upcoming launch window is approaching rapidly, the developers have noted that the broad, highly technical deep dives seen in previous updates will be temporarily scaled back. The journals for this month and next month are intentionally designed to be tighter and more focused, allowing the team to dedicate the absolute bulk of their energy to iron out the core version 1 experience of Sea Trials. Despite the narrow focus, this update introduces substantial foundational updates for the project. The journal provides an extensive breakdown of the Ile de Sante, the primary archipelago designated as the first official sailing grounds, covering everything from the archival historical research to the technology rendering the environment. Additionally, this month marks the release of the very first piece of original music scored specifically for Sea Trials, recorded using a full live orchestra. On the back-end infrastructure side, the newly overhauled Ahoy account system is finalised and prepared to initiate its first wave of rollouts. The Antigua Squadron is recruiting. Join my disciplined, organised naval unit for the British nation for Ahoy. Founded in 2025, our mission is simple: to create a welcoming, serious, fun environment where teamwork and strategic improvement come first. We seek dedicated team-first captains committed to competitive naval gaming and inclusivity. Help us build a successful and approachable squadron. Apply via Discord today or head to our website, theantiguasquadron.co.uk. Now on to the video. Chapter 1: The Music of Sea Trials. This month introduces the first formal piece of music composed specifically for Sea Trials phase of development. While previous musical compositions accompanied earlier ship showcases for vessels like the Velos and Nemesis, as well as the project's original crowdfunding trailer, those tracks functioned primarily as promotional scores. This new arrangement, titled Fair Winds and Following Seas, represents the tonal direction of the active gameplay experience and has been officially released on the project's public streaming platforms like Spotify. The score was composed by Jens Blankenberg and recorded at the end of April alongside Budapest Scoring Orchestra, an orchestra heavily utilised within the film and gaming industries for high-profile symphonic arrangements. According to the development notes, the tracking sessions yielded 10 complete pieces of music that will comprise the official Sea Trials soundtrack, all scheduled to launch concurrently with the game build. The musical direction aims to balance traditional 18th century instrumentation with modern cinematic orchestration techniques. Because Sea Trials focuses primarily on navigation, manoeuvring, and exploration, the composer opted for an atmospheric approach where the string sections carry the melodic weight. Strings were selected specifically for their dynamic flexibility, allowing the soundtrack to shift seamlessly between the quiet, minimalist, ambient tracking during calm seas and heavy, dramatic movements when weather or operational conditions intensify. The production of the soundtrack involved a multi-stage engineering pipeline, utilising orchestrator Tom Stower to translate the compositions for a live ensemble, alongside mixing engineer Felix Troeger to handle the final acoustic balancing. To support content creators, streamers and video producers within the community, Capstan Games has confirmed that all original music distributed within the game will be completely exempted from Content ID digital rights management tracking, ensuring the soundtrack can be broadcast without risk of automated copyright strikes. Chapter 2: Onward to the Ile de Sante. The primary geographical setting for the launch of Sea Trials is the Ile de Sante, a compact volcanic archipelago located just off the southern coast of Guadeloupe, in the French Caribbean. Historically, the islands are most notable for the Battle of the Saints, which occurred on April 12, 1782. During this engagement, a British fleet commanded by Rodney decisively broke through the French line of battle, resulting in the capture of the Comte de Grasse aboard his flagship. This historical engagement served as the original inspiration for selecting the archipelago as the foundational environment for the simulation. During the late 18th century, the Saints stood as a stark contrast to the highly lucrative sugar-producing islands surrounding them. The archipelago lacked a large-scale agricultural sugar industry or wealthy plantation estates. Instead, the local population, which numbered slightly over 1,000 individuals by 1790, consisted primarily of poor settlers, referred to historically as the Petits Blancs, who subsisted on small-scale farming and local fishing. The primary defence infrastructure of the islands during the game's specific historical window was Fort Louis. Begun in 1777, this installation was a modest wooden earthwork fortification designed to command the local pass and roadstead. While the site was completely rebuilt in later centuries into a massive stone structure, the development team is explicitly focused on reconstructing the original 1780s layout to reflect a rugged, isolated outpost of the French Antilles rather than a clean, idealised tropical location. Chapter 3: The Archival Research. Recreating a highly specific historical location down to a precise target year represents significant development hurdles, as modern terrain data reflects centuries of industrial and civil modification. Because ordinary 18th century buildings in the Caribbean were constructed out of highly perishable timber and wooden shingles, physical remnants from the era are virtually non-existent, forcing the art and design teams to rely entirely on archival documentation. To accurately reconstruct the layout of a 1780 without relying on guesswork, the developers spent nearly a year compiling historical fragments from international repositories. Critical documentation was sourced from multiple French, English, and American archives. The core design document for the environment was a detailed 1780s engineer's plan. This plan explicitly details the fortification works actively underway on the island during the exact historical window simulated in the game. The engineering process required a methodology of visual subtraction. Modern satellite elevation mapping natively includes the physical footprint of a 19th century stone fort, modern harbour breakwaters, an asphalt airstrip, and contemporary solar arrays. The team had to manually strip these components from the landscape data to recover the natural 1780 coastline. Furthermore, historical ecological records indicated that the modern protected dry forest currently covering the hillsides does not accurately reflect the historical period. 18th century deforestation had left the slopes considerably barer and more rocky than they appear today. The final game environment reflects this lower vegetation density, organising the settlement as a loose scatter of modest timber houses, detached outbuilding kitchens, and small subsistence holdings rather than a concentrated organised village. Chapter 4: Environment Creation and Technology. Translating cartographic research into a fully explorable real-time environment requires linking historical layouts with advanced rendering technologies. For the reconstruction of Fort Louis, the single surviving engineering plan was used to precisely map the walls, platforms, and interior defence structures. The resultant settlement layout features a highly authentic, loose collection of agricultural holdings connected by a rudimentary main path, complete with a historically plausible local tavern named the Smoking Monkey. The rendering of the archipelago relies entirely on real-world geological survey data, which includes highly detailed bathymetry, mapping the topography of a surrounding seabed. Because the game engine actively tracks the depth of the ocean floor as it rises towards the landmass, the colour, speed, and behaviour of the shallow water changes dynamically. Rather than applying a uniform wave direction across the map, the proprietary ocean engine calculates how the swells interact with solid geometry, causing waves to realistically wrap around headlands, break against cliffs, and dissipate along shallow beaches based on localised shoreline data. Because standard elevation mapping lacks the resolution necessary to render sharp, vertical rock formations naturally, The terrain system utilises an automated procedural material pipeline. This system dynamically detects steep inclines to paint base rock, scree, and loose debris across the terrain, which is then manually refined by environment artists who overlay hand-built cliff meshes. The entire environment is governed by a dynamic weather system utilising volumetric clouds to alter illumination and wind vectors in real time. Underpinning the ground geometry is a multi-layered surface material that dynamically processes weather states, generating physical puddles, simulating rain, water runoff down steep clay inclines, and tracking persistent moisture levels along the tidal shoreline. To maintain stable frame rates, the performance team utilises a network of fixed diagnostic cameras across the archipelago to benchmark hardware loads across successive software builds. The new Ahoy account system. Following the partial website launch detailed in the previous journal, the custom backend infrastructure governing the user account system has transitioned to a fully operational state. The system has been engineered to prioritise data minimization and modern security protocols, intentionally storing the absolute minimum amount of personal, identifiable information necessary to run the service. The platform does not utilise or store traditional user passwords on its servers. Instead, authentication relies on a passwordless framework, which means the team doesn't keep passwords on their servers. Alternatively, the platform fully supports cryptographic passkeys. This framework leverages a user's local device hardware security, such as biometric fingerprint scanning, facial recognition, or local operating system PIN inputs, to authenticate the web session directly through their default password manager, entirely eliminating traditional credential vulnerability. The database only links the user's secure identifier to their associated Discord account ID, historical crowdfunding tier entitlements, and persistent in-game profile data. Concurrently, all legacy fundraising vectors via third-party services including Patreon or Ko-Fi and Kickstarter have been permanently closed. The centralised website store now serves as the exclusive portal for project support, account management, and pledge modifications. The web portal automates what has previously been a manual administrative process, instantly verifying historical transactional data, applying account balances from prior donations, and updating community Discord permissions through an automated bot interface. Users can access their profile dashboard to review digital reward distribution, while physical rewards from the initial crowdfunding campaigns continue to be audited and processed through a separate, dedicated shipping database. Chapter 6: Community Questions. Finally, we have the community questions which have been answered by the Ahoy team. On in-world music. What is the plan for in-universe music? Will there be ambient music as we sail and on land? Will we get sailing songs? And will they be tailored to whatever nation you sail for, or shared between every nation? And what will it look like for content creators to use any music Ahoy might have? The developers reply, there are really two kinds of music in Ahoy, and we think of them quite separately. The first is the score, the music you hear when you are long into a voyage or out beyond the edges of society, and that is the work we have just been recording with Budapest scoring. The second is diegetic, the music that lives inside the world itself, the songs your officers and crew strike up on a long passage, and the music drifting out of the ports and the townsfolk of each place you visit. Because that second kind belongs to a particular place, it carries the character of where you are rather than being shared flat across the whole world. We are already in discussions with a number of artists about bringing this in-world music to life. On Sea Trials is where you will first be introduced to it. On the question of creators using the music, all music included in Ahoy will be released without Content ID, claiming for content creators to be able to record or stream Ahoy without a fear of copyright strikes. On Discord and the community. With the controversy around Discord and the difficulty of finding older information that has been put out officially, do you plan to create a more traditional forum to release information and updates? The dev's response: we have no plans for a traditional forum at the moment. What we are conscious of, though, is that community should never live or die by a single platform. Over time, we'll be looking at ways to broaden where the community can gather and where our information lives. So there is always somewhere to talk about Ahoy and somewhere to find what we have said, whatever happens to the policies or the fortunes of any one platform. On language support. Taking into account that there are more than 500 million Spanish speakers in the world, can you confirm that the game will also be available in Spanish? The dev's response: Hola. Every location in Ahoy is home to characters who speak the language that belongs there. So the Spanish-speaking Caribbean will be present in the game directly in the open world and future arena maps. As for the interface itself, we intend to broaden our language support as the game develops. For the historical nations Ahoy represents, Spanish among them, the language is part of the world. On armament customization. The Zephyr brig appears to be fitted with carronades. To what extent will a ship's armament be customizable? Will we be able to upgun or downgun a ship in caliber, or in type of cannon, say fitting bronze long 9 chasers? The dev's response: armament customization is something we will be experimenting with across the ships in Arena, and a large part of that experiment is working out how viable it really is to let players change a ship's guns. We have nothing to confirm yet, but the version we would love to arrive at is one where you can swap or augment your armament within a sensible set of limits, most likely bounded by the gun port allowance and the deck capacity of the ship herself. And finally, on age rating. Thoughts on an age rating for the game? I know the Capstan team has ambitions for realistic gore. Would that make it 18 plus? The dev's response: we think there is almost no chance Ahoy will carry a rating below 18 plus. Between the setting, the subject matter of the late 18th century, and the plain brutality of naval warfare, this was never going to be a game for children, and we would rather be honest about that than soften the world to chase a broader audience. And that's a wrap for Journal 33. The exhaustive reconstruction of Ile de Sante demonstrates the precise level of historical and technical accuracy established for the environments within the project. While the development team remains fully committed to finalising the archipelago for the launch version of Sea Trials, a strict quality protocol is in place. If the environment requires additional optimisation as the deadline approaches, the islands will be held back and deployed as a free post-launch content update shortly after release window. This contingency applies exclusively to the environment asset. The primary Sea Trials software build remains firmly locked to its July 2026 launch target, just next month. Over the coming weeks, the development pipeline will focus on deploying further live orchestral tracks, introducing the localised island populations, and systematically refining the dynamic sailing physics governing the Bumblebee sloop. The development team extends its professional gratitude to the community for their continued analytical support and patience as the core systems converge towards the upcoming deployment window. New operational updates will resume on schedule next month. What do you think of the latest journal? Are you excited to get your hands on Sea Trials next month and explore the islands? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, fair winds and following seas.